Hello, Knights of the Roll Table, and thank you for listening. What we have in this episode, it is just us, the cast, talking about Season 6. We kind of go through a recap and also, talk about our favorite moments and what went on for the characters, kind of how the different players and performers saw characters behind the scenes. So if you're interested, enjoy. If it's not very interesting to you, there's really no need to listen. It's not a regular episode. It's not storytelling. It's just us talking about storytelling. So enjoy or not. Next release, we will have a very fun one-shot we did on kind of a silly night. And then after that, on to Season 7, which we expect to be the finale season for our very long story at this point. So it's been an honor to be your Season 6 DM, and I very much look forward to more to come. Thank you. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and make life an adventure. Hello, Knights of the Roll Table. Welcome. This is our Season 6 recap episode, the long-awaited recap episode. Yeah. Oh, wow. Happy and excited to be doing it. This season did take us a solid 2 years. Really took me. I'm going to take principal responsibility for the fact that this season was 2 years in the making. A lot happened
and all
in
of us
life.
Are 3 years older.
Yeah.
Yep. I also
weird how that works.
Yeah, my child was breastfeeding when we started this.
Now she's going to college.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's mine. We're going to jump in. So we have the whole cast, the whole core cast here. Because the season went for a long, I'm going to do my best to recap, scroll through the episodes and recap the key points of the season as succinctly as possible, with maybe kind of a brief check-in as we get to our guest DMs along the way to kind of talk a little bit about their individual kind of interior one-shots, which has a big part of why this season took a long time. Also because all sorts of stuff in my life. But let's jump in. So our very first episode, called Awesome Possum, the team got pulled in by Sora. She showed you this kind of janky portal setup that Bartleby and what's his name? Chris's other character? Biscuit. Bartleby and Biscuit were cobbling
Biscuit
together.
The wizard.
Yeah, based on the remote control that had been attained in the air train heist episode, which was a lot of fun. And then you got sent, and it had been a couple of days, and also XX Bloody Heart was in the first part of the first episode and was no longer with you, and we have not addressed that in the past 2 years. He's out there somewhere. But you did meet Randall, the possum folk buddy in the crypts that you turned up to. You met Riggs, who had a plan to meet the knights and assault the Malkadoth, who was in charge of that kind of area, but he had to throw out that plan because you weren't there. And then he started making a new plan. And I think that believe that episode concluded with going to see the whole town being called out to see the Heartrend ceremony, where you watch somebody get stabbed, but that person's loved one died and then became undead and then walked off. And then Sarsa turned into a werewolf, which was a nice little first episode recap.
What a twist!
I know. Good on all of that.
Wait, but also you introduced the side effects of the portal gimmick.
Effects. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
So Gravely turned into a wooden puppet, and Branch got real lucky or something. And
that was a lot of fun.
Sarsa had bubbles coming out of her mouth. That was the first random thing that was happening.
Creating those 12 effect tables and then repopulating them as we used some was a lot of fun for me. And y'all did great having fun with those all throughout the season. I'm real proud of that. Let's see. So then we processed a little bit that apparently Sarsa's turning into a werewolf now. And then I believe kind of while Riggs had to go out and rework his plan, we got some chance to explore the town, which is also another highlight. I really enjoyed kind of letting you all explore and bring life to the people of this town. So You found Fletcher's flurries, and next door, Arrowins was kind of like stealing arrows from the old Fletcher's flurries, and across the street was Hugo's Bakery, and they had a rivalry. And we met Clump on Bottom of Boot, which became definitely a big arc for Branch. Y'all went in to a hotel to clear out
love
rats.
Story in this one.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Our most loving season ever.
Sexiest goblin season ever.
It was. It's a hot goblin fest. You cleared out some rats. Actually, your job was to rescue the rats based on Clump, where this other kind of amateur group was trying to kill them. So we met that group, had fun with that. Meanwhile, Randall and Tiburon and Sarsa were drinking. So he explored the singing unicorn and met Cletus the bartender, who Sarsa identified was a were-rat. That was a couple episodes worth of world building that we continue to follow those characters. We did a bio episode for Randall around there.
We did?
We did.
What's his backstory?
He is a possum.
Yeah, I know. That's all I came up with. We did more on that?
No, that was it.
Okay, great.
He likes junk. He met a cool band. He met some people. He's really into trash.
Oh, yeah, the band. The trash pandas or something, right?
Yeah.
Trash band.
Which, by the way, like genius. Jeff is very improvisational, but if you listen back, XX Bloody Heart is listening to the band in his first part of the first episode.
What?
He's listening to the Trash Bandits, and he references it in like a hipster, like, oh, you don't know these guys, they're new sort of thing, which I thought was quite brilliant.
Man.
Yeah. Eventually Riggs comes back and organizes you all to like, okay, we're going to go in. So you make your way into the fortress. Importantly, you meet John Fletcher, who's hanging out with his son, giving him a little reading lesson. Seems like a cool dude. And he's kind of like the main sort of, what do you call that? The sort of mouthpiece of Malkadoth, who handles his affairs. And he talks to you and kind of lets you into the main chamber. You end up fighting Malkadoth, chasing him back into the inner reaches of the sort of like dungeon. It's this palace that's built into Mount Cambion. So you went through a couple of trap rooms where John Fletcher appeared and said, you don't need to do this, go back, it's going to be bad for everybody. You went through the famous moat room that turned out to be full of zombies and traps, and eventually made your way through the important room that has the portal on one side, the treasury on the other side, and the trapped room entrance to the kind of like boss lair on the third side. Importantly, we haven't addressed this either, but the little tiny robot Voop-Dee-Doo 2 was working on the portal when you first got there, and he disappeared through it. And we don't know where that will lead. Explored the treasury a little bit, picked up a few items for later, and then moved into this trap room where there was this sort of like dice trap, essentially, that rolled. And it came up Riggs first, which was really like my worst case scenario. But like there was kind of a story in terms of why it would not work for Riggs, which is kind of a clue to like he was like so committed to like taking out the bad guy that it essentially wasn't that much of a sacrifice for him to give up his own life for that. So led to a reroll, which was honestly totally, and I had one of you roll, I think Matt rolled it. It was totally like the whole season arc that we have to rescue Gravely, as opposed to Randall or Tiburon or Branch or Sarsa, was totally dependent on a roll of a 6-sided die. And
see, I think that's insane, because I don't think anyone would have cared as much if it was Randall, but I mean, almost any of the other characters. Just because, Gravely had been such an established, part of kind of the lore and kind of center part of the group, I think the dynamics would have been so completely different. And the fact that was kind of left up to chance, really, the dice god smiling upon us that day.
Yeah, everybody liked Gravely, It's like, oh, the big rat guy is missing that we just met 10 minutes ago. Oh, well, the goblin's gone. Oh, well.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking in terms of like, I think my absolute nightmare scenario went which is it rolled Riggs first, and even though it was like explained within my like overall arc, it was going to be lame that it comes up him and led to a reroll. So that wasn't what I wanted, but I was prepared for it, and I was really thinking in terms of like, well, what would happen? Like in my mind, Gravely was the worst case scenario because he was so central, but like really the way it worked out, I feel like that was the absolute like best thing to happen because it really he's been with us since season 1, episode 1. He's important. We've explored him a lot. We know him well, and he was really occupying this leadership role, and it forced everybody to like figure out what they were doing. It worked out really, really well, and I think the characters were like genuinely dedicated to getting him back in an important way.
Well, and then I also got to bring in a fun new character.
Yeah,
one of my favorite moments of the season was that whole arc with Oliver. So, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Well, briefly, in the moments, episode titles here, like "You Shall Not Gas" as a good episode title, where Branch turned us all into gas. We figured out we could do that.
Yeah, we don't need to. We don't need to deal with this puzzle. Let's just be gas and go.
Skip right through anything that's not absolutely 100% airtight.
I think that was the only time I really pulled that trick out the whole season. So
it was great. Some processing, which was nice character moments in terms of like processing, like well, literally that episode is called What Now? Genuinely like, what are we going to do? What do we do? Because like, obviously we got to try to save Gravely, but we have no clues so far and like what that would mean. In the interim, we have Raising Awareness, another good title where Sarsa shows up to the Were Youth Support meeting, and we met the Were creatures. So we read all the Were creatures. Y'all played a Were creature. Super fun. Another highlight for me, I think, was putting that together. And then we jumped into sort of our first one shot, which was led by me, which was prompted by we got to introduce this new character. And this was like also a super cool way to introduce a character. First episode called Oliver and Company, where you went back, accidentally got transported 1,000 years into the past, met young Oliver, saved his lady love, Keelani, in a situation that was very similar to what happened with John Fletcher and the fog and everything. And then you come on back, and there is the 1,000 years older Oliver. Very cool.
Agree. He also acted 1,000 years old, which was a great choice.
Yeah.
It's weird playing a character that's very old, but also like elves age differently. So it's, you know, it's like, hey, I've been around for a long time, and I'm an older elf, but I'm also very like physically fit. So there was a lot of like different, like what happens if somebody that has a lot of old wisdom is also like just jacked, you know? So that was kind of fun to play that dichotomy.
I also like that when we first met Oliver and he was youthful, he also was the weakest of all of us.
Yeah.
You were like a level like 7 or something.
I was level 3.
Oh,
yeah.
It was even worse than I thought.
Just like a level 3 fighter, and then when I came back, I had added like 10 levels of monk because he became a monk because he was like out on his own, like kind of building his stamina and like kind of self-exiled after, you know, his wife died and everything. So
Getting back after that, Oliver's like, hey, I'm here to help you out. I owe you a favor. I told you I'd be there for you. This episode is called Cleaning Up Cambion, another fun building where kind of like Oliver kind of leads an examination of like, let's figure out what's going on here, and let's find who the I forget what led to that, but like we got to go out and find the dissidents kind of, which led to an exploration of talking to a bunch of guys looking for, they started talking about Crazy Lou. Your exploration led you to Clean Lewis instead, who gets confused with Crazy Lou sometimes, but he really wants to just literally clean up the town. And I think at the same time, the parallel was Randall and Tiburon going to see Caraquill, a little more who you had met in the bar, and a very fun and also like impactful interaction, continuously like harassing and roughing up Caraquill for just no reason at all, and accidentally creating mutant cockroaches, which like That was in any part of like my plan. That was entirely created out of that, about that interaction, and it was just like, well, these have to be important. You can't just create mutant super cockroaches that don't impact the rest of the season. So that went on to be a lot of fun.
It's like Chekhov's gun, right? Only it's Randall's roaches.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Knocked Bone and What's in a Name, which is our first like step out one shot, which was DM'd by Weston, and it was a lot of fun and very creepy and very Weston. And also Kevin was there, who I got to play. A lot of weirdness and Weston is just so great at setting tone and running things in a very snappy way. So he did a great job with that. It was interesting. It was an interesting mystery to unravel. The fact that it was two of Soot summoning creations from season 3. Great callback. So fun. And that's really like, if we had the piece that really like exploded the season, besides some like delays where we couldn't record or I couldn't get an episode out or whatever because of me, was really like, probably for expediency and flow, we should have been harder on, like, Weston showed up for one night of recording and said, we're getting this done tonight. And really, they probably all should have been like kept to that for expediency. But like, I wasn't really interested in like shortening any of those when we got to them, because it was really fun for me to play. It was a really helpful break to like change up the DMing, and you all just did such a great job with that like that is a big piece of like how long this season took. But I don't think I would necessarily give it up for like all the fun that was had and the different ways to explore, and just like selfishly me getting to play different characters and get DM'd by all of you. So
well, let's go to the call-in line. What did you think? Do you think Zach should have given up the DM chair?
Well, I've been wanting to call it long.
Yes,
long
Topeka, go ahead.
Zach should only be the DM. He should never get to play. That's terrible if he gets to do that.
All right, let's go to Maya Forever calling from Lone Star, Texas.
Yeah, I like when Zach DMs because he just has such a soothing voice. Also, when are we going to bring Maya and Coach back? I want them.
Let's go to Hot for XX in Omaha.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Oh, hi.
When's XX coming back?
Good question. All right, back to you, Zach.
Oh.
You're all disproving your core premise by being awesome, jumping in and taking over. Our next kind of like connection with Cambion, like the piece here that I feel like was starting to unfold that like was hard for you guys to play with as much as I wanted you to, is the notion that each time you went back to Cambion, it was getting a little bit more kind of like militarized and kind of repeating the history. And I think because there was such gaps between our Cambion visits, like the conceit that like things are getting noticeably, like the guards are getting more power and things are starting to get buckled down a little bit more, but they're treating you guys nice. So like, do you actually like intervene with it? I think that was undermined by a little bit by like, it was so long between check-ins that like you all didn't quite have the confidence to remember exactly what happened and things. But that was starting to unfold, and you were starting to kind of react to it and notice it and kind of see the progression. Oliver and Tiburon dueled and taught some stuff to Tiburon. Yeah. This says Randall escalates bad choices. I think that was, Rick showed up in that. So there was like clear signs that like the guards were starting to crack down, but Rick showed up and was like, hey, presents for you guys. Thanks so much. You're great. Actually, we didn't cover that, like the way you got thrown into the weird ethereal pirate ship made of dead knights was that Crazy Lou showed up to the portal and bombed you. There's basically a terrorist attack on you that.
Oh, he was the one who bombed it. I couldn't remember who did that.
Yeah.
I expect which is one of those things. Crazy Lou, honestly.
Yeah. We all thought he was destined for such great things. But yeah, there's essentially a terrorist attack on you, which upon returning was kind of being used to like crack down. But like, hey, these are our heroes. We have to protect them. So that was a big kind of theme I wanted to explore a little bit of kind of like they're treating you good, even though they're kind of like reestablishing the same sort of regime as had already been there. So that included Rick showing up and saying, you guys have been so great. Like, these things belong to the Treasury of Cambion, but they're going to be best used in your hands. So they gave you all items that were kind of well suited to you. And Randall got, in addition to the fly that he could, the fly like statue that he could turn into a giant fly, he got the goop that had just dripped out of the portal that could enlarge and reduce. And he used that to make a giant mutant cockroach. We played with that for a little bit.
I stand by those choices.
As you should.
Yeah. And then we went back to the library. We got a message that somebody needed help in the library, and that's where Matt took over for our first guest one-shot. This was really awesome and really fun. And so, I don't know if, Matt, you want to say a few words about the library one-shot?
I barely remember it. But the idea I had was just like, I wanted to go into books, like Gumby.
That's right.
That was
Gumby
the inspiration there. Yeah. And
that was a fun premise. That was a really fun premise.
At some point I got it in my head that I wanted every story to be related to someone. And so it's like the history scroll for Oliver and the children's book for Randall and so on and so forth. And that was interesting. And there was a couple I was like, okay, I hope they just managed to skip this one. And they're like, hey, let's walk right into that. I was like, oh no. But I thought it turned out okay. It was fun to DM.
That whole premise and then the execution of it was really fun.
And all the book enemies.
And within that, we had Jarek and Sarsa reuniting after she had cut herself out from both Jarek and the Crescent Squall because it was a little unclear to her who was her true love. Which definitely, like, I set up the meet cute, like, okay, this is what's going to happen. That, like, you're going to go in here and he's going to literally physically fall on you and be pressed up against you and defend you. And then you're going to have to work it out from there. Like, that was like, this is the moment I'm going to engineer this. But then from then on, it was improvised. And we let that go between Matt and the two of us.
There was some rom-com trope right there for sure. It was really subtle too, Zach. I really appreciated that.
And I think that was actually in the rom-com book, or if I remember correctly.
That was at the very beginning. Because I was like, I was handing off my DM duties.
That's not what I would have cast Sarsa into.
There was some point when I went to the trashy romance novel genre for one of them.
We did. I think that's the one. I think that's the one that we ended up not going to.
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
I think I would have
to go through my notes.
Missed opportunity.
That a lot more.
But how was that for you and Sarsa, Jen? Generally dealing with that?
I mean, obviously that was a big moment, and I think a lot of like, not to get like too heavy into like Sarsa's whole like shtick right now, but like I feel like a lot of this season was kind of her coming to terms with the fact that like she is super tethered and like, as somebody that kind of has really prioritized their freedom above all else. And like, I think for a while really kind of imagined that she was autonomous. Like she's really obviously not. And like when we had the Heartrend, like the idea of a weapon that like literally, attacks you by attacking what you love, like that's literally the curse that she was up against. So like that on a very personal, like it kind of mirrored a lot what she was going through there. So, I think for her just acknowledging that like, yes, I do love this person and I would do anything for them and having to give voice to that very openly was a big moment for her, for sure. She's still an alcoholic though.
The whole Jarek Sarsa thing was like, for me as a player, I really enjoyed that. Like, because I mean, I'd been rooting for him. I ship it, right?
Airship it, yeah.
Yeah, airship it. Nice, love it. And so when it actually finally happened, I was very happy.
Yeah, no, that was kind of I think a while coming, and hopefully she's a little bit kinder to him now.
Yeah, I think playing the like that's the thing. That's the thing that most weirds Jarek out about the situation is like, why is she being nice to me? Like, this is new. There was just a lot of like shifts in the relationship that were fun to play with. And one thing that I was like a fascinating kind of like symbolic crash of like D&D powers and like the romance and relationship between them was the notion that like proximity to Jarek is making her anxious and like triggering the like amulet to make her turn, but also Jarek's paladin aura boosts her saving throws. And so that she's got the proximity to Jarek is both heightening her like risk of turning and also calming her and presenting it was like D&D stuff that we had worked out that like I feel like perfectly was like mimicking the like tension between them, and that was really fun too.
It's a good metaphor for relationships. You know, you open yourself up, you're vulnerable, but you're also emboldened. Man, way to therapist that. Way to go, Zach.
It happens. So we got back from the library eventually. The interim there was going in to explore the mountain, hearing that like this prospector had gone up there, having a sense that like the mountain was important and maybe Gravely was in there. I think that was the first hint that like there was maybe a dragon lair in there. So we went up there, explored, got attacked by the Zorn and the Slod, and then came back into Carlos's one shot. Carlos, you want to touch base quickly on how that was for you?
Sure. You listeners might have noticed, but I don't have a lot of DMing experience. So, however you may feel about how I DM'd the whole thing, I definitely did not keep it to one shot. It ran longer than I expected it to. But I really did try my best to just run several different things and tie in maybe an unexpected point from Branch's backstory back into the story. And probably what I spent the most time doing is figuring out the rules for that drinking contest that we
Which was an
participated in.
absolute highlight of my season. Like, sure, Sarsa and Jarek, like, yeah, that was cute, but the drinking contest it felt like that was the true full circle moment.
That episode is titled Sarsa's Calling.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I felt very seen.
I haven't gone back and listened to that episode, but I've been curious from the people who edit it. Did you cut out the cloaca bit?
I'm pretty sure no.
Cloaca.
Awesome. Is it?
We did consider calling that what's a cloaca. No, it's in there. Gross as
so I'm
it
curious
is.
From Carlos then, did you
pivotal.
Did you have that factored into your rules? Like what if someone turns into a bird?
No, not at all.
Disgusting.
That was
well, then you ran with it really well.
Rookie mistake. You got to know about every orifice of every character.
You know what? You live and learn. Certain RPG systems do account for orifices, so I feel like I should integrate that into future one shots. But yeah, and it all ended in a big fight. Y'all saved the stag god Cletus and Branch's old tribe of goblins as well. So all's well that ends well.
Yeah, I thought that was really fun to get to like meet my goblin tribe, because I think we'd seen them very very briefly in the one in my backstory, in Branch's backstory, but for the most part he was leaving them in the backstory, so it was nice to actually see that comeuppance.
I got to play Glob from End of Stag's Nose, which was a lot of fun. Enjoyed
Did
that.
A fantastic job, Zach.
I would definitely say, Carlos, you don't come across as like a beginner DM at all. Also, for anybody that listened to the holiday one-shot Goat Crashers, whenever the last holidays were like perfection. Right.
You know, I never make one-shots easy on myself. I don't do it on purpose. But, you know, Carlos, I say good on you.
Layers and layers.
You understand the struggle. Yeah.
Chef's kiss.
The next visit back to Cambion, the episode is Manning Up. I believe that's the Moonflower Festival where everybody in Cambion drinks the Moonflower tea and turns into a creature, which means the were people can come out and be themselves because it happens during the full moon. But Randall turned into a human man.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot about that. It's a regular person.
Such a good bit.
Wearing clothes and using utensils.
A lot of fun in there. I believe from there we went out to meet Caraquil led you based on what you'd threatened him he needed to do earlier. he took the team out to meet Abercor, the wizard, who did some scrying to give some clues about where Gravely went, which is where we determined that it sure looks like he's being held on a dragon horde. And then also he said, can you deliver this box for me to this innkeeper out in Elderlock?
Oh, yeah, box.
And that took us into Chris's one shot. Chris, tell us a little bit about Demons and Devils.
I wanted to explore some of the dynamics of the world between demons and devils, and how that tied into the story. Was bringing back a demon adjacent character villain that we had sort of left plot thread from the last season I DM'd, from season 5, Sozeb the Industrious, who got away. And so I thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun if he was there and he was the innkeeper, but we don't find out about that until after they get back. So he is basically a sort of a quest giver, and he's like, hey, I'm just running this sort of delivery system for all of the elites, and there's a little bit more, like information getting and things like that, but also you get to see that devils hate demons and demons hate devils, and Zach got to play Igneous again, and that was fun. Some I like to throw you guys through some silly puzzles and challenges, and and after you have a big demon sort of, I know Jen really wanted to have some area of effect battles, and so I was like, let's do it. Let's just have a minion fight with some big bosses, essentially. So that was hopefully a fun. And then Sarsa still has a favor that she can call in from this big devil guy. That
yeah,
we'll see.
Unfortunately, she's a little off the market right now for that. The favor that I.
Oh, whoa! Hey!
Well,
now, whoa!
No, it's more of like he will come in and something will happen. We don't know what's going to happen, but he said, if you need something from me in terms of like fighting or reinforcements, there's like a whole sequence of sort of instructions that he sent her. So.
Up, down, down, left, right.
Now, remember, she had to do like the devil horns.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that was it. I mean, I just was like, hey, let's have you go into sort of an upper level of hell, sort of, and fight a bunch of demons, and thought that would be fun.
Something that was handled very well and I enjoy, and I feel like this has been a big part of a lot of things we've done in interesting ways in our podcast, is this kind of like shared DMing responsibilities and just like collaborating without spoiling it for each other, which happens behind the scenes, but like talking to each DM about like, okay, what do you want to do in general? Don't tell me. Who do you want me to be? How do you want me to get you into it? And then together, like each one shot needs to have some sort of effect on the big story. So there's like a key piece of information the team will get that will lead them to like the bigger quest. I think all of those conversations were handled really well in that I could jump in and play as a player. It's not like I knew what was happening and it's more of an NPC. And like each one shot did have meaningful contributions to the big story to propel the story forward. But it was a situation where I could like confidently hand it over to each of you and then just play, which I feel like is the balance in that is like not as easy as I feel like we have pulled it off each time. And I really appreciate it.
It was a little tricky because you have to go in knowing, okay, this is who's going to end up starting the adventure. And then no matter who might end up ending the adventure, this is what needs to happen, or this is where it needs to go. But some people might die, some people might be different, some people might, like you can't really plan on characters so much as like beats. So if you are going to do this in your campaign and like have multiple DMs and but still play it mystery things just kind of have those like, hey, anything can happen from point A to point Z, but things, there are things that are going to need to transpire. Like for me, it was just like, this item needs to get back, and whether it did or not, we'll see. I mean, there was a possibility that you didn't find out it was Sozeb, and there was a possibility that, you fought the devil and the demons would have given you the stuff, and then there was I tried to keep it open to have multiple endings,
which a lot of times the way that plays out, it's interesting for me. We're also so good, I feel like, at like letting things play out randomly, like the notion of like imagining what would this season have looked like if the dice rolled Sarsa got taken away, like completely totally different. Once it's locked in and you're listening to a recording of how it happened, it's like inevitable, of course, that how it would went. But there really are a lot of points where like could have been anything, and we would have taken that in whatever direction it went, which is also like credit to this group for really keeping improv in a game where you're trying
to
tell
job,
stories.
Us.
Yeah,
we really played that game.
Turns out we like it.
So Sozeb kind of like tipped off the like, okay, I'm going to send you to people who like have the answers to what you are asking, who know all about what you need to know. He wasn't clear about who, and part of that was like Chris wasn't clear about who, because I was about to transport you to the elemental planes, which we recorded a conversation between Oliver and Sindel. That was another aspect we haven't quite touched on, the notion of like using the portals to kind of pull people out of the story so that you could DM, but also making where your character went critical. I think we didn't touch on like Tiburon having a visit to his family, which is another very fun episode, and all the ways that propelled the story in different directions. But Oliver, and unrolling the notion that he is in fact related to the McIntyre clan, Sindel's grandfather and Sora's father, which was first tipped off when they met Cavan and they sort of whispered to each other. I don't think that was shared with the team, but later he and Sora kind of fought. And so now the first person to go to the elemental planes is Oliver, who meets this fire woman who they slowly piece together is his granddaughter, which Chris and I recorded that separately. I thought it was handled really well. It was very kind of sweet in the way it played.
That was a fun conversation.
Things. And then you all caught up to him by getting sent by Sozeb to the elemental planes, where Oliver was already there for you. Soot joined us for that episode, who was trying to parlay his way into being declared the Lord of Water because he had the crown that he had taken from Drop Off, and Gravely wasn't there, who apparently was the official Lord of Water, which we had kind of toyed with, like, well, if Drop Off became the Lord of Water because he killed Lord Aquilius or whatever we called him in season 3, like, technically isn't Gravely the new one because he killed Drop Off? So that's been kind of like in the back of my head for a while, and we got to put that into action while Gravely was missing.
Yeah, that was surprising because Gravely wasn't there, and I'm just sitting there going, wait, what? Say what?
I don't know.
Welcome back, and you're a god.
I don't know if when we caught up to Gravely, anybody had mentioned that to him yet.
So yeah, and he doesn't know. Like, he has no idea.
Go swimming at the beach one day, and there's going to be like people like, "Oh, my lord, you've returned." What?
We'll get to that next season.
Gravely's going to he's going to get a big head and like get really egomaniacal about the whole thing.
But Weston rejoined us. We went and fought the 3-headed skeleton creature, and freed up the elemental planes to assist the fight. They gave you the map of the mountain and also kind of like a better notion of like what's going on with Gravely, and like there's probably still time to save him, but you got to go fast. But then when you go back to Cambion, a month has passed because the elemental plane time works differently and things are far away. So you're confronted with like urgency, extreme urgency to get to Gravely, but also things have really gone to hell in Cambion. And everybody's kind of like run off and captured. A lot of people are in jail. So there was some sorting out of that, figuring out what was going on, hiding out in the basement of the Singing Unicorn because you needed a rest, seeing that Gerald the werewolf was down there, getting a little update from him. Branch dragonflied off to the prison and was able to talk to Clump on Bottom of Boot, and also Cletus was locked up in there. And then you got ambushed and fought off a team of assassins that turned out to be led by Tiburon's brother.
Dun, dun, dun.
Talked a little bit with Salazzo and explored that relationship. Eventually headed off into the mountain to find where all the refugees were holed up. The Zeros were there trying to defend it, not very confidently. You caught up with some more people there. Kind of like a really tracked down Bavrax, who was the satyr who was, through illusions, impersonating Malkadoth when he had public appearances, ally of John Fletcher, and like had sent the assassins. So really kind of like there was some tense moments in that situation of reconciling really straightforwardly. Like these people aren't looking at you with you as heroes. These people are scared of you because of the way this regime has kind of like framed you. Not framed you for doing bad, but just like they're doing bad as they tell everybody you're great and they haven't necessarily seen you do great things. So kind of like reconciling with this isn't kind of the way we were framing it. I'd like to check in for just a second on kind of like how y'all started to like think about the season then and kind of like what needed to be done and how much that kind of like had been present with you up to that point in the story.
Yeah, I think one thing about like, you know, as we're especially being like high level characters, you know, we're not like simply doing an errand for somebody. Like when we're like making choices as a group, like there are like more profound effects on it. And I think the unclearness of like the result of those actions in the middle part of the season especially was really like, well, wait a minute, why aren't you rejoicing in freedom and liberty? Like we have succeeded at doing a thing, you know? And so to like have that to like kind of come back to and kind of have be, you know, kind of an ethical puzzle at the end of being like, well, we got rid of the bad guy. Like, why isn't everything good? You know,
Yeah, this
and
is
like
the end of the movie.
Yeah, what I don't understand. You know, is a good thing to kind of, you know, challenge what can be like really difficult to like either navigate or to like play in a way that has any sort of like non very obvious direction in which it's going, right? If, you know, none of them seemed outwardly evil and like their perspectives, we were like, oh, okay, but like you have to go away now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then, you know, just kind of being like, oh, wait, no, the reaction to it is off here. So figuring out a way at the end there, especially to be like, well, how do we reconcile this? We want to be good. We're trying to do this. And, you know, really having to rely on each other to like verify we're doing okay, right? And you know, get to the root of like what the that kind of unnerving feeling that was kind of getting thrown at us.
Yeah, that was something that thematically I definitely wanted to kind of like try to present as something to grapple with, along with kind of like in pair of that, presenting a villain who was doing like inherently evil things but wasn't broadcasting any of the like villain tropes. Like John Fletcher seeing me like kind of a nice guy, seems like a good dad, wasn't using this evil voice, was just a dude who was speaking in reasonable ways, making a decision that like he's never going to lie to you. What John Fletcher says to you is straight up, including like, I'm not a good person, I'm evil. And just like, you know, he's not evil looking. He's not wearing a cowl. He doesn't have horns. Malkadoth was all of those things. Malkadoth was like evil armor, scary creature, but like the real person at the head of things kind of seemed like a cool dude. And it's not as easy to decide to assassinate somebody who seems like a cool dude and a cool dad. And he never really, there wasn't a clear resolution to that at any point, kind of needing to figure out.
I was pretty hung up on the kid for like a while.
Parent syndrome for sure. Like whatever happens, do not hurt a child in my story.
No, I won't lie. I would walk away from the table.
I feel you.
I deal with that. There's enough of that in real life. I don't have time for it in my games. So I won't lie. I like still wonder about that.
He's doing okay. Don't worry. All the kids are fine.
Is he though?
He's probably he's gonna need some therapy for sure. But like he's okay.
Don't we all?
Yeah, that's something that happens strongly. I have that same sort of reaction, especially like when you first become a parent of like, oh no, stories that have kids under threat in any ways are like making me very upset, if not like bawling in a way that like didn't even like faze me before. And so I feel that. So from then on, you kind of went back into the cave. So there was some times of like making your way through the kind of like final battle, final dungeon, so quote unquote, fighting some snails, some sloths, fighting a creature that pulled you into the lake, fighting a treasure. What are they called? Monster chests. Mimic, treasure mimic. And then eventually falling into the dragon's chamber where Gravely was. We have not, as we're recording this, we have not released this episode. So this is something none of you know, but interlaced in that final battle as it's released is we recorded some discussions basically between John Fletcher and Gravely that are happening intermittently as you're fighting the dragon, and John Fletcher is maybe going to be taken down, which was forcing Gravely to kind of reconcile with like the same sort of questions. Like, you seem nice, but also like what you're doing is not okay, sort of.
Well, I can't wait for that.
We're having these kind of like soulstone, like limbo conversations to reference Avengers. And and Gravely's kind of like, I don't understand, you know, as a player and also as a character. I think we were both kind of like, what's your deal, man? You know, and I think that was good because we finally had, as you'll hear when it comes out, you know, Fletcher's kind of like, I'm just trying to do what's right by me, you know, like it's not that I wanted to, it's just like I have to. And
you gotta look out for number one, man.
You know, there's evil in the world that's necessary, and there's evil in the world that's selfish. And this is more of a necessary selfishness. And yeah, it was kind of interesting because I that's when it finally clicked, I think, for me as a player of just, okay, this is why this guy is doing it. Because, you know, you want a sense of urgency, but you also want to understand what's going on. I would get really frustrated if I'm just like, I don't know what we're doing. And so towards the end, it was like, okay, let's go, you know. But I think that's just a nice thing, you know, if you feel that way in your campaign of like, what's going on? Like, don't be afraid to talk to your DM, and maybe they'll just be like, hey, there's a method, or maybe it's a good reminder for them to like push things along and you know, keep things a little bit more urgent.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I do when I'm running an ongoing campaign is I like to make my players tell me what happened last time, partly because I have a terrible memory, but mostly it's because I think that helps with the situation you're describing, Chris, where it's like, okay, but like, now what? What do we? Where do we go?
It also,
what do we do?
I think, allows you to key in on what they actually focused in on. Because you might have an interaction, or like, I know every DM has been there where you're dropping clues that to you feel so obvious, like that you've painted a neon sign that like, this is important, and they're still hung up on the child of the big bag evil guy that you mentioned for one line, or whatever it is. You know, it could be whatever.
Or the
but
fence.
Like, I think
you know, they're like, how do I get over
people,
this fence?
Yeah, no, season 1. Nice
Call back.
But yeah, like, I think that's a great call out.
Yeah, and there's been time in all the seasons that I played where I was like, I don't really know what's going on, but I feel like I'm just going to make the choices of the player, because they were all like, a mystery is unfolding. And like when it came out, especially in being able to like listen back to episodes and like see like what the DM was up to the whole time, like that's been a really fun experience for me throughout that podcast. That is like not necessarily present if you're not doing D&D in a podcast form, where you can really go back and see, you know, starting with the fact that XX on his like fantasy earbuds was listening to Randall's band, and just like all the things along the way that like, oh wow, oh that paid off, oh that's where it started, you know, is a lot of fun. But for sure there's lots of moments where as a player like, I'm just going to keep rolling forward. And there is, and I think it is, to be transparent about that, like, this is how I'm feeling. Can you, if there's stuff that we're missing, can you make sure that we're getting it? Because that would totally cue me as a DM to like, and I did my best to like check in at times when like something that had happened in the past that was recent for your character, but was a long time ago for you, the person, do my best to remind you and kind of update, this is who this person was. But like, you know, if you're not actually the character doing this real high stakes adventure in real time, you have to like communicate about it and just kind of keep on the same page, right?
And listeners at home, go ahead and write in with plot holes and things that we've abandoned
Yes, please.
and things that, we've forgotten about that you want to see back in there. Let us know.
We will patch them all up, starting with Sven and what's his name? What had ever happened to those
Robert.
guys, Sven and Robert? What are
I
they?
assume they went down
I
with
think they
somewhere?
disintegrated,
Oh, yeah.
didn't they? Like
At the end? Well, I'm talking about at season 3. Of all the things we've wrapped up, we've pulled back a lot of things all throughout and pulled in a lot of characters. And I told Weston, like, of all the callbacks, what I never, ever would have thought we would go back to is whatever happened to Sven and Robert. I loved that. I loved that
They were really well named.
yeah. So anyway, big boss fight. This is behind the scenes, the first half of our dragon boss fight. Another aspect of this season is like, it's Dungeons and Dragons, man. It's time we fight a dragon. So that was a little built into it.
In a dungeon.
Also. Yeah. The first half of that fight, it wasn't a full episode, but we had like a glitch in a recording session where we had to like stop and restart. And then we recorded the full first half of the finale fight and then realized, oh, it wasn't recorded. So we kind of had a dress rehearsal of that, which of all things to lose, I feel like that's actually good. Because like we were able to go back to it and still just play it for real. So if things went different, that was fine. But just like be a little bit snappier, be a little bit on top of things and make it happen. So I didn't feel like we lost golden narrative moments or a lot of stuff in losing that specific thing. But it was frustrating to be like, okay, hey, so the last hour, we're gonna revisit that next time.
Such is the dangerous dance of recorded media.
Yes, which has happened one other time in the podcast where we lost a significant chunk of a season 3 fight, but it worked out. So finally, we're wrapping up. So I guess big finish of bringing Gravely back. I reached out to Chris and just said, like, because an interesting thing that has propelled a lot of interesting choices has just been the notion of having a guest DM. Your character has to go somewhere. So what's going to happen and what does that mean has like fueled a lot of interesting things. And one of the things was like, well, if Gravely comes back, does Oliver just say, see you later? Do we make Chris play 2 characters for a while? And I was kind of like, I have an interesting idea that I think could be really fitting for Oliver. And I didn't tell him what it was. I just said, like, there's going to be a thing. And if you feel like it's right to do this, go for it. And I just said, like, if you do, I will tell you this. But if you do, I'm going to make it cool. And so we had the final.
It's always nice incentive.
Yeah, the resolution. Gravely comes back. Is like, what's going on? People are happy to see him. John Fletcher is there, kind of like back in his form, about to kind of like disappear. And it says like, hey, there's no reason that you would do this for me. I understand, but I can help you if this thing happens. But it's going to take somebody basically like giving up their life so that I can help you, because I know all these things about what you're going to need to know to get this job done. And so there's some discussion about that. You want to talk a little bit about that, Chris?
Well, I mean, I think for him, I don't know if I want to say everything right now, because I think there might be some things that will potentially get
matter
revealed,
later.
later. So I think what I will say is for him, he at this point felt like, I've had a long life and I will do this. His whole thing this whole season was I have a duty and an honor to fulfill my promise. And if this is what I need to do, then so be it. And like, he just saw that, like, he's always been, I'm going to do this for the knights. And in this case, the knights like were this group of people for him. He has other reasons, but I won't go into that because we might play that out later.
Yeah. And I think for Oliver specifically, there's this balance. For more than anybody else, there's this balance of like, there are people I care about here that I've connected to that I would like to spend more time with, but there's also a lot of people on the other side, including Keelani, that like either side is tempting. So I think you handled that very well, with a little bit more to be explored for sure. So we had wrapped up the John Fletcher thing, but not dealt with the Riggs regime thing. So y'all went back, gathered the townsfolk, went back into the town. led. This is hazier to me because I haven't edited this episode yet, but kind of like went back in to like resolve this, break in, get people out of the prison, get Riggs, and kind of bring him to accountability. I think with the pressure context of everything of like, well, we can't do this like we did last time. We got to do it kind of better. And so we worked through that. We saw a lot of kind of like revisiting of friends and allies you made, including Salazzo turned back up to help out Tiburon's brother and the cockroaches and army of cockroaches and Clump and all of the friends that you'd made.
See, originally I thought you were presenting us with almost like a time loop kind of thing where like Riggs was going to fall into this, like, no, I have to protect it. And then the fog comes out and then another dice roll happens. And it was like, no, we have to prevent this. Like, otherwise it's just going to keep cycling, as you sort of hinted as it might. But because for me, that was like, okay, that's a high stakes kind of thing, even though Riggs wasn't as much of a threat, you know what I mean, as like the dragon. So I kind of thought of it like, oh, if we don't stop this cycle, it's just gonna keep going forever.
Then we'd have to do a whole nother season if the roll was wrong. Right. We'd just be back at it.
Okay, Grave is like, not again.
Oh, bother.
Well, in a less kind of Doctor Who sort of way.
Yeah. Oh, you know, I'm going back.
In a less sort of Doctor Who way, that is kind of like the message of the season of, you know, power does corrupt in its own way. The Heartrend was kind of accelerating that, but like power changes the way you think, and you start making decisions that start feeling right to you. And like, if there's not kind of safeguards, you just end up playing out the same thing if there's no kind of like checks and balances.
Did any of us, like the main characters, like did we ever have the Heartrend used on us?
I don't believe so.
No, Riggs used it on John Fletcher, but it didn't work, which established it's been used on John Fletcher before. But he was holding it to Sarsa, so he's kidnapped Sarsa. So that was really the only time. We can jump back onto that. So y'all went in to kind of like find Riggs. He ended up sneaking by, kidnapping Sarsa, pulling her off on her own with the Heartrend at her throat, which was a threat to, now firmly established, would be a threat to Jarek if he used it. So the one thing that could kind of shut Sarsa up and actually get her to like not act immediately, it seems like, was okay, not quite yet. Which I think played out very nicely in that like Jarek from one direction and the rest of the team from another direction were on the way to sort of like damsel in distress rescue you, but by the time they got there, like Sarsa had handled it, and I thought that played out really nicely as well. So Sarsa, Jen, how was that for you?
I mean, it's always nice when you can clean up shop. Yeah, she had some pretty fun combat moments. Still stuck on the drinking competition though. That was my highlight of the entire campaign.
So we had some wrap up after that. And I think the last big moment was the notion that we see the dragon emerge from the mountain, but it seems to be that John Fletcher is not control of the dragon. Instead, it's Oliver. We'll be following up on like what's going on.
What a twist!
A twist.
Oliver the dragon.
Let's go through. I posed a few questions to each of you just to kind of like recap your experiences of the season. I think I asked
a story moment that you appreciated.
Yeah.
A comic moment you appreciated.
Moment, and there was a third one.
Thoughts on the journey specific to your character and what you would like to see in the finale season.
Well, let's kind of like rotate through everybody's kind of like highlight story moment, and then we'll go through comedic moments, and then we'll do a little look to the future. So, story moment you enjoyed.
I'll go. We already touched on it, but like to me, the whole Sarsa Jarek, like that was such a nice wrap up of that. I mean, not that their story's like over, but just like it was.
It was like a full circle moment.
I don't think it was rushed, but then I think it was good, and she had kind of been grappling with that for a while, so that was nice.
I think that was a great moment for it to happen, just unexpectedly. Like it wasn't predictable, and it was kind of like, oh, you know, and it was it was a nice kind of oh, we get to finally see that,
And I think in context of like giving Jen time as Sarsa to like be separate from Jarek for a long time and explore that and just kind of like be separate in the season made that, I mean, all the more impactful, I think, for me. And also having it be, oh, we're doing this, but also we're not going to hang out now, I'll see you later kind of aspect still kind of preserves that notion of like, oh, what's going to happen next with them? Like it's there, but it's not there as far as where we are in the story have all been nice too. Very well played, Jen. I've had a lot of fun with all those moments for sure.
I did like the whole, going into the books and going back in time to meet young Oliver and then jumping forward. I thought that was a fun way to introduce, my other character. And we always get a little nervous playing with time travel, but I think that was a nice way to handle it because it was so far long ago. And it was just specifically not related to their story, but kind of just to say, hey, this has happened before. You get to witness it. And we're going to give you the answer of what needs to happen, but not necessarily tell you like where he is or like that kind of thing. So I thought that was clever because it wasn't this big, like, what do we do? For the whole season, it was just, we need to find him. And that was a different kind of challenge,
Mm-hmm.
So I liked that it not only introduced Oliver, but it also introduced like, here is the solution, or part of it. And then a lot of the rest of the season is we need to find Gravely and we need to kind of enact this. Like we have pieces of the puzzle, but we need to figure out how we're going to make it work. How do we reenact this ending of the fog and everything like that?
And very fun to have two different flavors of Oliver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That one shot is essentially that Oliver bio episode and like the coolest way I think to do a like introduction of a character. That was a lot of fun. Matt, you were going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, for me, the story moment that, like, we already talked about the Jarek and Sarsa one, but the part that really, like, connected for me and made me go, like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that, was the fact that Oliver was Sora's dad. Am I getting that right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I knew it was that relationship, and I was like, wait, is it dad or grandfather? Right? Because it was your little... I did not see that come, and I always see that kind of thing coming, so that totally caught me, and I loved that.
Yeah, that was fun.
I enjoyed Tiburon having that interaction with his brother, and because I think Tiburon is such a hard to read character, and I think intentionally so. Like that's the like part of how much does he open up, and what do we like know about him, and like to really see, and like we all kind of know him as kind of level-headed and friendly, and maybe gruff, but like like hey, we get him, but then to see that interaction with his brother, that's like, oh my, like, wow, something really happened here. And like this really, to see that kind of other side of a character where he so strongly has a strong opinion about somebody and like in a direction that we haven't seen before, I thought was really interesting and fun to like add on to the character. And I think interesting to see how that continues forward and what else we discover about our friend Tibby.
Poor Carlos plays these characters whose family members are just wronging. We saw that with Yenny. You saw that with Tiburon.
Complicated.
Yeah, man. Is everything okay at home?
You're not allowed to be well adjusted in D&D.
Yeah,
or
it's
in
more
life.
fun to have the drama play out there.
Biscuit's family is great. He's got 9 brothers and sisters. It's awesome. Come over.
Maya's got a good family. She's the problem.
We haven't. I don't know if we've met Maya's family, have we?
She's talked about them.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh,
think.
that could be fun. Oh, we did in her bio, I think.
I think we probably, yeah.
We
It was
talked
a
about
long
it a little
time
bit. We didn't like play the scene, but I think in discussing her bio, they're like, they were great. They didn't quite get her like artistic like flow, but like they were
off and do your
encouraging.
thing.
Yeah.
they were like Ned Flanders' parents.
No, they're trying their best.
She's playing that drum again, man.
All right,
She's
back to
the
this
outlier
season.
one.
Carlos, what was a story moment that stuck with you?
Well, piggybacking off Jeff's favorite story moment. I think what was particularly cool about that is that was a payoff to something that had already been set up earlier in the season. Because right after Weston's portal adventure, when we returned and there were like 60 additional knights that had previously been thought dead, just hanging out at the Singing Unicorn, Tiburon ends up meeting this Genasi lady, and they have this conversation as he kind of like escorts her over to the edge of the woods. And that's the conversation where Tiburon first starts talking about his brother. But when it was a series of improvised, like the situation was improvised, the character he was talking to was improvised, that character having a sibling was improvised, and then it led to, I knew that Tiburon had like a sibling, but I in no way had thought of like, how am I going to talk about that sibling? What's the relationship actually like? And it all just came out there. And then Zach later on, that clearly sort of informed the material that you then use to bring that character into the story after such a long period of time that I had almost forgotten where that conversation had even happened and what it was about. So I thought it was pretty great that it's a thread that's like a small intimate moment and scene that can almost like stand by itself, but then you end up bringing it back later and ends up having like additional resonance with the character. That's really cool. So well done.
Can we transition from that? I think that's a nice transition into the comedic moments.
Yeah.
Because one of my favorite moments was in a recent episode called Brotherhood, where after Tiburon sends away Salazzo and he sends away and I'm like, and Oliver's like, "Are you okay?" And then Tiburon says, I will be after I take 5 deep breaths. And then Oliver says, I say, maybe we should all do that. All of us in real time take deep breaths. And I was laughing. So I completely forgot about that moment. I was listening in my car and I was just like, what is happening? And like Oliver's having trouble breathing. And like Randall says Randall at the end of each breath. It's so dumb, but it's like such a good moment of trust between us as players that like, we're just going to play this awkward moment out. It was amazing. I laughed
That's
so
my
hard.
favorite kind of stuff.
Randall. I was like, oh, I'm wheezing. Just go back and listen to the end of Brotherhood. It's really funny.
We never shy away from a group bit.
Oh God,
We love it.
Speaking of group bits, my favorite comedic was when we had the Were People
That was mine
meeting
too.
and just everybody like jumping in on those like NPC kind of characters. Like those kind of moments are always like my favorite, when we kind of stumble upon those beautiful little moments that then
I'm sorry I
feed
missed that.
so many future interactions.
Yeah, we had some good characters out of that. We had, let's see, I have it right here.
Binky,
I know I
Binky.
was Kent the ant.
Mm-hmm.
And we had
Binky the Minky was Carlos.
Carlos
I
was
played
Pink the
Gerald.
Weremink. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Jeff was Tim the Werecrane. We had Cletus, of course.
Right.
It was just ridiculous.
So dumb.
And I loved it so much.
We love dumb.
That was a story point that like didn't get revealed because there was kind of a mystery of like somebody betrayed this meeting, and it was for sure, we never caught up to him, but it was for sure Tim the Werecrane that ratted you guys out.
Wow.
Oh man,
Should have been a rat.
Damn
insider
that, Tim.
knowledge.
He's
Yeah,
gonna
we
get
didn't really
roughed up
pursue
behind the
that
scenes.
I also really liked the this was a little bit of a self congratulatory thing, but in the story that I ran where you guys figured out that you had to slap each other to get into the secret layer. And I was just kind of like, yep, you know, and then there was like, well, let me try
We slap you.
this. And then it happened.
What if I slap myself? Oh, that worked.
I just thought that I knew you would handle it great, but it was just so funny.
I love the punchy moments like that. Or flappy.
Also, that goblins kissing in our world is rubbing their teeth together. Was great.
Greatest little man.
Oh yeah.
How else would you do it, guys? I don't know.
This is intimate moment between
yes.
goblin. And early on in the season, we had some funny. I want to say there was some funny. The bit with the zucchini cornbread,
Yeah.
Was pretty good too. Like just like, oh, let's try this. It just became this like tasting moment, like where we're like, oh, this is a good moment. And, like the side quest sort of just took over.
A lot of the setup for that is in like we published a session 0 where I kind of asked you to be like, what do you want to do? I don't know how we kind of like collectively came along to like Sarsa's like had the amulet and the curse, but that's something she and I kind of like came up with out of session 0. But like the fact that like Gravely would really love to find a zucchini cornbread is something you mentioned in the episode 0, and some other things that like led into that whole town exploration, including like, could Branch have a love interest and other stuff that like propelled us into some of those and was handled in a great way for sure. I want to say, like, thinking about it, I mean, there's a lot of good story moments, but like one of my favorite moments, and it's comedic, but it's also story at the same time, is Branch's whole romance and like finding a goblin that kind of mirrors him and like being able to play that. Like, it's inherently funny, but also like handled very earnest, and you kind of like
sweet.
Get where they're coming from. Like that was really nice all along as well. Like you really felt for it.
It was a nice shout out to all those social awkward romances out there, and which there are many, and we are part of. You know, some of us are part of those, and you know. And but that's okay. Like I mean, we all have a little awkward goblin inside of us.
I'm socially awkward enough where playing those scenes is hard for me. Even I'm like, oh, this feels a little weird. But that was also like we, you know, the 4 things you asked for. The third one was like, what's a moment for your character? Like I think that was for Branch. It was the whole storyline with Clump. And even like you gave me, like you and I had talked beforehand, and I'm like, one thing I don't like about druids is you can't wild shape often enough. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I want to find a way to do, I just want to be an anamorph. Right. And so Clump, in addition to like that wonderful like storyline, you also gave me like something I could do in the game. And that's where like things like the dragonfly and like sneaking around as a spider and all that stuff really came in handy. And that was super fun. And I, as a player, I really appreciated all of that. I felt taken care of as a player, which was nice.
Yeah, and handled it well. Paid off many times. And like nicely limited, like we were able to kind of like structure that for like, all right, this isn't going to like unbalance, you know, fights and things, because you could only be like level 0 creatures, I think. But like, hey, like if you want to become whatever sort of creature to sneak around and fill whatever role that's going to fill, like I don't see why that shouldn't happen at level 12 or whatever we are. 12 to 14.
Turn into a Madagascar hissing cockroach and scare off some people. Turn into a bird. And
I also like that we tried to induct Randall into the Knights, and he didn't want to do it. Just casually. It wasn't really a strong belief. He was like, that's okay. And then eventually he was like, all right.
Okay, fine. I love Randall. He's one of my favorite characters I've ever played. He's wonderful.
He was a really fun character.
You did a good job coming up with all of your little like spell metaphors and things like that. That was good.
It's such a Artificer, such a great class in that sense, because like literally it's like it tells you, okay, you need to make this make sense for what your character's doing, and like it's a good setup for when you have a character where you have some sort of conceit or idea of how you can kind of build together in the same way that you did with your Carver. Of like, this all has to come from the character and make sense for them. It's fun. It's
for me, it was hand carved little wooden toys that reside inside of his body, and for you, it was pieces of trash, like
from his big trash bag that he
totally made sense.
Yeah.
I loved that.
I can't believe how long it took me to realize that your trash bag was a bag of holding. I think you must have said it or implied it at some point, but then like halfway through, I was like, oh, what's going on there? Also, I will say that both Carver and Randall, were inspirations for me as a player in a different game where I was like, I should try out because I tried Artificer once, actually with you guys, when it was like in like pre-play or like
Mhm.
testing out, and I didn't
Yeah.
love it. But
remember
seeing
that.
you guys, I was like, that seems fun. So I made a character, and it was like a toy maker. So everything I did was like very like, oh, I'm going to build this
Nice.
thing, and it's like a toy, and it like crawls along. So that was super fun. Seeing you guys do that made me have more fun in another game. Even awesome,
Which is like a really nice, like in the like character description of Artificer, it does say like, hey, you should flavor these spells to like have fun with. And I've always appreciated that like one little line in the like Artificer like player setup that like have fun with it essentially. And we've made the most of that. I think Randall is really, it's such a good example of a like strong comic premise for a character. Like it's such a good setup. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to explain, but it's just a setup where like you're able to like confront every single situation throughout the whole season in terms of like, how would Randall view this? How would my like musically inclined, trash obsessed possum man see this situation in a unique way and address it? And so it was just like nonstop, like funny Randall moments the whole time because he had such a unique character that just lends itself to, you know, funny situation after funny situation.
So next season, all Randall all the time.
That's what I'm saying.
All possum.
What about Tiburon, Carlos? Did you feel like he had a good journey?
Like character journey?
Yeah.
It was interesting because of the general shape of the season being like semi one-shotty adventures and then coming back to like the sandbox and further develop things. I thought the developing relationship with Randall was like fairly solid. But Tiburon's developing relationship with his family is probably what came to the fore. Whereas if you asked me, is that something that you think is going to get explored this season? I would have said like, how's that going to come up? You know, but it ended up sort of coming up in those middle sessions in a way that was a little unexpected, and I didn't necessarily know exactly where to take it, but I think that led to some interesting role playing in there.
Well, you also got to multi-class and wizard, and that was like you just like fledgling wizard a little bit, which I thought was kind of a fun way to flavor Tiburon as well.
It's like the opposite of min-maxing, where it's like it's so inefficient for Tiburon to waste an action to just cast the spell that half the time doesn't do much of anything.
Yeah.
Let's see. 2 highly destructive attack rounds? No, I'm going to do Flame Wisp.
Do chromatic orb.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
That's my turn.
Well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That actually reminded me of a thing I really enjoyed in this season. That it was like one episode where I played Celius or something. But in that,
you got to
at
coach
one
him?
point, I got to coach him on Chromatic Orb specifically. And so then every single time you use Chromatic Orb after that,
you have to say it.
it was so great.
Oh, I did like the bit with when y'all came to Elderlock and the NPC that you ran into that also spoke in the same accent as Sarsa. and she was like, "What part are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, you know." And like we were kind of made up that dialect. This is the dialect that what did we say? Like this is the dialect that these types of creatures speak in, and that was really fun.
I honestly don't even remember where we landed on that, but I just enjoyed, like, had to call it out, you know, because I don't think we've heard anybody else with that particular. I won't lie, it floats between like Irish and Scottish. It depends on how much she's had.
We've
to drink.
never
No,
known.
it's because later on we said that the devil. That's how he really talked, that the devil spoke in that same accent. So when you hear the devil, it was like, you know, but you understood,
language.
infernal. And so therefore you could speak. But that was infernal is that kind of Irish lilt accent.
Who knew?
That was infernal to me was like Swedish Chef.
Bird.
I mean,
we established that for something else.
No, that
was also in there.
That was infernal.
That's deep speak or something.
That's deep speak.
The other thing was it was an NPC because Sarsa came from like a sea shanty town.
Yeah. No, it was the first thing was an NPC. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. But yeah, the Infernal was the Swedish chef voice.
Merry Crispin Pool.
Roll a d20, derp. All right, well, let's talk about the final season. The final season's coming up, season 7.
What do you guys see in the future? I mean, specifically, any other what you want to see, or just like what you see for this character going forward? Thoughts you have in terms of what might be left for them?
I think I'm gonna say some character pairing is gonna get married. Maybe it's a surprise. Maybe it's someone that we've known for a while. But so we have a couple of couples out there, and that could be fun. Some hero or heroes are gonna die.
Gotta kill some people. It's finale.
We gotta raise the stakes, and there will be a multi-stage attack on whatever the final threat is. That's what I hope and foresee.
I'd like to go back to all the season 1 characters, but like have them be in varying stages of like essentially Fat Thor. Of like, I'm imagining Maya like that, like fame and success have gone to her head. Like, maybe Gravely now like owns DreadX or something. Like, I think like I'd like to see them turned on their head, and like, but they have to get the band back together.
Like the Muppets movie.
So like a time jump kind of, and like,
also
all right, this has happened. We failed to kill Thanos, but we're going to try again.
Could it also be a musical? Can I rely on each of you to write a song for your character?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yes.
I don't think Jen will do that, though.
Great.
Jen's already got a whole playlist.
If we're talking pie in the sky things.
Sure, why not?
An idea I had that will not happen, but that I enjoy thinking about. And
not with that attitude.
Jen's idea kind of reminded me of it. Is I would love to jump forward really far and like see the kids of our adventurers, like Sarsa and Jerix. They had twins, and then you guys can play those, and like little baby Branch or whatever. I think I played a video game like that once, and I really enjoyed it, and that concept has always stuck around. I'm like, I want to do that.
That might be a nice like epilogue.
There you go.
I think I would like to see not an event but a feeling. During Weston's one shot, I basically felt like the Leo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood meme, where he's pointing at the screen, going like that. Because when those two showed up as the antagonists of that one shot, I was like, you could have given me 100 guesses. I never would have guessed these guys would have come back. And I think that feeling in the finale season would be tremendous to have it over and over. Just pull, characters we haven't seen for years and years now just come back. The shark that Tiburon rode at the end of the 3rd season or something comes back as some
maybe that's
random
the big bad
NPC
evil is like a support group of all the like randoms whose lives have been upended because of
people we've wronged.
Like the tertiary collateral damage groups have come together and they're like, we have to eradicate this organization. Is basically, but happy and funny.
Well, we know some things. We know like Aranye seems to be the core threat. It's been well established over the last couple of seasons, and so like it's got to be like ending this whole thing that's been kind of like coming together. But like how we get there, and I mean our challenge in the narrative that we've talked behind the scenes a little bit with kind of like the different DMs throughout the seasons of like how we're going to tackle this is like we have established so many great characters, and ideally you would want like every single one of them to be involved in a final story. And that means that like we got to share DMing duties. We've got to all be able to play different characters in different ways. So that's like the crazy like puzzle that we've set out for ourselves in the way this podcast has unfolded and all the cool ways we've innovated it. So like that's a challenge, but I also feel like everything we've done, all the interesting formats and the sharing of DM duties and having Jeff come in to be the town of Giacca and everything along the way. And all the moments where y'all jumped in to be the werewolf support group and all of that, like that's all preparation for like, that's what this story demands, really. Like Carlos was saying, like call back all these moments, call back all these great characters to bring them into a finale in some way where that's relevant. It's a huge task, but like, and we're gonna not write it, we're gonna improvise our way through it. But I think like, I'm excited to jump in and do our best with it.
All this and more in season 7 of Knights of the Rolled Table from the Universal Studios lot in Burbank, California. Good night.
That's not where we are.
I will take that. Thanks all of you. It has been an honor to run this season, even though it took a very long time and we're all 5 years older. It's been a lot of fun. There was a lot of golden moments. It's always a joy to look for. I mean, as the DM, it's always like, oh God, you're always stressed, especially the more improv-y we keep it. There's even more like, how is this going to go? It's stressful every time you sit down as a DM, but like every time I get up, I feel like, wow, they just made such great stuff happen that I was not expecting. So it really has been a joy. It's always a joy to look back on the great stuff that happened, even though all throughout I'm like, is this going to go okay? And so you guys really did make this a fun journey. Thank you for sharing all your highlights. And I'm excited to go into the next bit. So for now, we'll see y'all soon, but take care of yourself, take care of each other, and make life an adventure.
Adventure.